The morning sun broke through the thin fabric of the car window, warming Eleanor Wilson's face. At 87, her body ached more than usual after another night spent in the back seat of her old blue station wagon. She blinked away sleep and glanced at the small figure curled up beside her. Little Lily, just 4 years old, was still sound asleep, her dark curls spilling across the makeshift pillow, one arm wrapped tightly around a worn teddy bear missing an eye. Eleanor carefully sat up, trying not to disturb her granddaughter. Her joints protested with each small movement. 3 months of living in this car had been harder than she could have ever imagined. The back seat that once seemed spacious now felt like it was shrinking by the day. "What would your mother think of us now?" Eleanor whispered, gently tucking a blanket around Lily's shoulders. The thought of her daughter brought tears to her eyes. It had been 14 months since the accident that took her only child away. 14 months since she became both grandmother and mother to little Lily. Eleanor reached for her purse, a faded leather bag that had seen better days, and pulled out a small pill organizer. Each compartment held the medication she needed to keep her heart condition and arthritis in check. She counted the pills carefully, only enough for another week. The money she had set aside for refills had gone toward new shoes for Lily instead. The child's old ones had holes so big her toes stuck out. A soft knocking on the window startled her. Eleanor's heart raced as she turned to see a kind-faced woman standing outside. It was Mrs. Rodriguez from the bakery down the street, holding 2 paper cups and a brown bag that smelled of fresh bread. "Good morning, Eleanor," Mrs. Rodriguez said as Eleanor cracked open the door. "I thought you might like some coffee and breakfast." Her eyes were filled with concern, not pity, a distinction Eleanor had become very good at recognizing. "You're too kind," Eleanor said, accepting the offerings with hands that trembled slightly. "Please let me pay you something." Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head firmly. "Not necessary. My mother lived to be 92 and I know she would want me to help you. How is the little one doing?" As if on cue, Lily stirred and sat up, rubbing her eyes with tiny fists. "Is that bread?" she asked, her voice still thick with sleep but her eyes suddenly alert at the prospect of food. Eleanor smiled despite everything. Lily's resilience amazed her daily. Children adapt, she had learned. They find ways to see adventure where adults see hardship. To Lily, living in the car was sometimes like camping, though lately she had been asking more often when they could go home. "Yes, sweetheart. Mrs. Rodriguez brought us breakfast." "What do we say?" "Thank you," Lily said, already reaching for the bag. Mrs. Rodriguez beamed at the child. "You're welcome, sweetheart. I put some extra jam packets in there for you." After Mrs. Rodriguez left with promises to check on them later, Eleanor helped Lily change clothes in the cramped space of the car. Today was a preschool day, one of the few normal things Eleanor had managed to maintain in Lily's life. "Grammy, will you braid my hair today?" Lily asked, mouth full of sweet bread. Eleanor's arthritic fingers struggled with the task, but she would never refuse. As she carefully separated the dark strands of hair, her mind wandered back to how they had ended up here. It had started with the fall. Eleanor had been coming down the stairs of her small rented house when her knee gave out. The medical bills from the resulting surgery had drained what little savings she had left. Then came the eviction notice. Her small teacher's pension and Social Security checks couldn't cover both rent and the new medication she needed. She had called everyone she knew, but at her age, most friends had either passed away or were in similar financial situations. When the final eviction date came, she had packed what could fit in her car: clothes, some toys for Lily, important documents, and one special photograph in a silver frame. Everything else had been left behind or sold for cash. "All done, sweetheart," Eleanor said, tying off the braid with a ribbon. "Now let's brush teeth so we can get you to school." They used bottled water in the small mirror propped on the dashboard. Eleanor had become efficient at these makeshift morning routines. The community center 2 blocks away had showers they could use 3 times a week. On other days, they made do with wet wipes and dry shampoo. "Grammy, Tommy asked me yesterday where I live," Lily said as Eleanor helped her put on her backpack. A donated item from the preschool's lost and found. "I told him I live in a magic car that can go anywhere." Eleanor's heart squeezed painfully in her chest. "That was clever of you," she said, keeping her voice steady. She lived in constant fear that someone would report them to child services. The thought of Lily being taken away terrified her more than homelessness ever could. She had heard the whispers at the preschool drop-off. Should that old woman really be caring for a child? Do they have a stable home? Eleanor always made sure Lily was clean, well-fed, and properly dressed for school no matter what it took. As they walked the 4 blocks to Little Sprouts preschool, Eleanor held Lily's hand tightly. The morning was cool but promised a warm afternoon. They passed shop windows and apartment buildings, and Eleanor caught their reflection in a storefront glass. An elderly woman with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a clean but clearly worn blue coat, walking beside a small child in a pink jacket that was slightly too big for her. "Good morning, Ms. Wilson. Hello, Lily." The preschool teacher, Ms. Tina, greeted them at the door with her usual warmth. "Lily, we're making clay animals today. Are you excited?" Lily nodded enthusiastically and gave Eleanor a quick hug before rushing inside. These moments of separation were both relief and agony for Eleanor. Relief because for a few hours Lily could be a normal child, surrounded by friends and caring adults. Agony because Eleanor would spend those hours worrying and trying to figure out how to improve their situation. "Ms. Wilson," Ms. Tina said quietly, "I packed some extra snacks in Lily's cubby, and the parent committee is putting together bags of weekend food for families who might need them. Would you like me to set one aside for you?" The kindness nearly broke Eleanor's resolve. "That would be helpful," she managed to say. Pride had no place in her life anymore, not when it came to making sure Lily had enough to eat. As Eleanor walked away from the preschool, her steps were slower, her shoulders more hunched. The persona she maintained for Lily, brave, confident, in control, slipped away when the child wasn't looking. She made her way to the public library, her refuge during school hours. There she could rest in a comfortable chair, use the bathroom, and search online for jobs, affordable housing, or assistance programs. Most had waiting lists years long or age restrictions that worked against her. At a computer terminal, Eleanor pulled out the photograph she carried everywhere, herself at 26, sitting at a grand piano on the stage of Carnegie Hall. Her fingers had flown across those keys once, bringing audiences to their feet. Music had been her life, her passion, her career. For 37 years, she had taught piano to children and adults alike from the small studio in her home, until arthritis began to twist her fingers and the local music school opened with younger teachers and shinier facilities. "Eleanor Wilson," a voice called softly. Eleanor looked up to see Mrs. Chen, the librarian who had been helping her navigate housing websites. "I found something," Mrs. Chen said, sitting down beside her. "The community center is looking for part-time activity coordinators for their senior program. It's not much, just 10 hours a week, but it's something." Hope flickered briefly in Eleanor's chest. "Do you think they would consider someone my age?" "They specifically mentioned looking for seniors to lead other seniors," Mrs. Chen said with an encouraging smile. "And you told me you used to teach music. They want someone who can lead sing-alongs." For the first time in weeks, Eleanor felt a small spark inside her. Music. She could do that, even with her stiff fingers. She wouldn't have to play complicated pieces, just simple chords to accompany singing. "I'll help you fill out the application right now," Mrs. Chen offered. By the time Eleanor had completed the application, it was nearly time to pick up Lily. As she walked back to the preschool, her step was lighter despite her aching hip. It wasn't much, but it was hope, a tiny crack in the dark wall that had surrounded them since losing their home. Lily burst out of the classroom door holding a misshapen clay lump. "Look, Grammy, I made a piano, like in your picture." Eleanor stared at the small creation. Indeed, with some imagination, the clay lump resembled a tiny grand piano. Tears welled in her eyes as she hugged her granddaughter. "It's beautiful, my darling," she whispered. "Perfect." As they walked back to the car that served as their home, Lily chattering about her day, Eleanor held the clay piano carefully. Sometimes hope came in the most unexpected packages. Maybe, just maybe, music would find its way back into their lives and help them find a real home again. Rain pounded against the windows of Eleanor's old station wagon. The sound had once been soothing, but now it filled her with worry. Rainy days were the hardest when you lived in your car. Everything got damp, clothes wouldn't dry properly, and Lily grew restless in the confined space. "Grammy, I'm bored," Lily whined, pressing her small nose against the foggy window. She drew a smiley face with her finger, then wiped it away with the sleeve of her sweater. Eleanor checked her watch, a gift from her late husband, one of the few valuable items she hadn't sold yet. It was only 9 in the morning. The library wouldn't open for another hour, and they had already spent 2 hours at the local diner nursing a single cup of coffee and sharing a plate of toast. "How about we go to the mall today?" Eleanor suggested, turning to look at her granddaughter. "We can walk around and look at all the pretty things." Lily's face brightened immediately. "Can we see the fountain? The one with the pennies?" "Of course we can," Eleanor promised, though she knew they wouldn't be throwing any pennies in today. Every cent mattered now. 20 minutes later, they pushed through the glass doors of the Westfield Shopping Center, welcomed by a blast of warm air. Eleanor felt her tense muscles begin to relax. Here, they could spend hours walking around without being asked to buy anything. The security guards had grown used to seeing them and never bothered them as long as they didn't cause trouble. "Look, Grammy, they put something new here." Lily tugged at Eleanor's hand, pointing toward the main atrium. Eleanor adjusted her glasses and looked where Lily was pointing. In the center of the open space, surrounded by potted plants and comfortable-looking benches, stood a grand piano. Not a brand new one, but a beautifully restored upright piano, its dark wood gleaming under the skylight. "It says people can play it," Lily said, trying to sound out the words on a small placard beside the instrument. "Can we go look?" Eleanor hesitated. It had been nearly 2 years since she had touched a piano. After arthritis had made it too painful to play for long periods, she'd sold her beloved instrument to help pay rent. The sight of the piano made her fingers tingle with a familiar longing that she'd been trying to ignore. "Grammy?" Lily looked up at her with questioning eyes. "Yes." "Let's go look," Eleanor said, letting Lily lead the way. As they approached, a teenage boy was plinking out a simple melody with one finger, his friends laughing and filming him on their phones. When he saw Eleanor and Lily waiting, he shrugged and moved on, leaving the bench empty. "Sit down, Grammy," Lily said, patting the bench. Eleanor lowered herself carefully onto the bench, Lily scrambling up beside her. The bench was just the right height, and as Eleanor tentatively placed her hands on the keys without pressing down, she noticed the piano was well maintained and perfectly in tune, a pleasant surprise for a public instrument. "Play something," Lily encouraged. "Oh, I don't know, sweetheart." "My fingers aren't what they used to be," Eleanor said, though her hands remained on the keys. "Please?" Lily looked at her with her mother's eyes, deep brown and impossible to refuse. Eleanor sighed and pressed down gently on a single key. A clear, perfect C note rang out. She pressed another, then another, forming a simple C major chord. The sound washed over her like an old friend's embrace. Almost without thinking, her left hand found the bass notes, and she began to play a simple walking bass line. Her right hand followed with a gentle melody, Moonlight Sonata, the first piece she had ever mastered as a young woman. Her fingers moved slowly, more carefully than they once had, but the music came back to her like she had never stopped playing. Lily sat perfectly still beside her, watching her grandmother's hands move across the keys with wide-eyed wonder. Eleanor had never played for her before, had never had the chance to share this part of herself with her granddaughter. "That's so pretty," Lily whispered, encouraged. Eleanor transitioned into another piece, a lullaby she used to play for her daughter when she was small. The pain in her joints seemed to fade away as she lost herself in the music. She didn't notice at first when Lily's small fingers reached out to press a high note, then another, mimicking the melody Eleanor was playing but an octave higher. Eleanor smiled and adjusted her playing slightly, making space for Lily's experimental additions. The child had a natural ear, finding complementary notes that harmonized with Eleanor's melody. Together, they created something new. Grandmother and granddaughter connected through music in a way words could never achieve. Lost in their shared creation, Eleanor didn't immediately notice the first person who stopped to listen. Then another. And another. A small circle began to form around the piano, shoppers pausing with their bags to watch the unlikely duo. "What else can you play, Grammy?" Lily asked when they finished the lullaby. "Well, let me think," Eleanor said, flexing her fingers. They ached, but it was a good ache, like greeting an old friend after too long apart. "How about something a bit more cheerful?" She began to play Debussy's Clair de Lune, one of her performance pieces from years ago. The familiar notes flowed from her fingers with surprising ease. Muscle memory was a powerful thing, carrying her through passages that she thought she had forgotten. Lily swayed beside her on the bench, occasionally reaching out to add a high note here and there. When she wasn't playing, she hummed along, creating her own childish counterpoint to the complex piece. The crowd around them grew. Store employees stepped out into the atrium, drawn by the beautiful music echoing through the mall. An elderly couple sat down on a nearby bench, the woman resting her head on her husband's shoulder as they listened. A mother with a fussy baby found her child suddenly quiet and attentive to the sounds. Eleanor transitioned into Chopin, her confidence growing with each piece. Her back straightened, her chin lifted, and for a few precious minutes, she wasn't an 87-year-old homeless woman. She was Eleanor Wilson, concert pianist, music teacher, artist. A man in a suit approached, standing at a respectful distance until Eleanor finished her piece. The small crowd that had gathered applauded warmly, making Lily grin and Eleanor blush. "Excuse me," the man said as the applause died down. "I'm Robert Hampton, the mall manager." That was truly beautiful. Eleanor tensed, her hand finding Lily's small one on the bench between them. Were they in trouble? She had seen signs at other public places prohibiting loitering. "Thank you," she said cautiously. "We were just about to move along." "Please don't," Robert said quickly. "Actually, I wanted to ask if you would be interested in playing here regularly." Eleanor blinked in surprise. "I'm sorry?" "We installed this piano last month as part of a community arts initiative," Robert explained. "We've been looking for local musicians to play scheduled sets on weekends. It would be a paid position, of course." Paid position. The words hung in the air like a lifeline. Eleanor tried to keep her expression neutral, though her heart was racing. I'm not sure if I could commit to regular performances," she said, thinking of her arthritic hands. "My playing isn't what it used to be." Robert glanced at the dispersing crowd, many of whom were still talking about the performance they'd just witnessed. "From what I just heard, your playing is exactly what we're looking for. Something that makes people stop and listen. Something that creates a moment." Lily tugged on Eleanor's sleeve. "Say yes, Grammy," she whispered, not quite as quietly as she thought. Robert smiled at the little girl. "Your granddaughter is a natural performer too," he said. "The two of you together, it's something special." Eleanor looked down at her hands, spotted with age and slightly twisted from arthritis. "May I think about it?" she asked. "It's been a very long time since I played regularly." "Of course," Robert said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. "Call me when you decide. We could start with just one performance this weekend, see how it goes." After he walked away, Eleanor sat still, staring at the card in her hand. A paid position. Even if it was just for a few hours on weekends, it would be income. Something she hadn't had in months beyond her small Social Security check that barely covered food and gas. "Are we going to play again?" Lily asked, pressing random keys and delighting in the sounds. "Would you like that, sweetheart? To play with Grammy here at the mall?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "I want to learn the piano like you. Can you teach me?" Eleanor's throat tightened with emotion. Her daughter had never been interested in music, had chosen sports and science instead. The thought that her granddaughter might want to follow in her musical footsteps was overwhelming. "Yes, my darling," she said softly. "I can teach you." As they eventually left the mall, the rain had stopped and weak sunshine broke through the clouds. Eleanor held Lily's hand tightly, the business card safely tucked in her pocket. For the first time in months, she walked with her head held high, a new sense of purpose in her step. "We should practice," Lily said seriously as they approached the car. "If we're going to play at the mall, we need to practice." Eleanor laughed, a real laugh that bubbled up from somewhere deep inside her. "Yes, we should," she agreed. "But where?" Lily thought for a moment, then pointed across the street to the community center. "They have a piano there. I saw it when we took showers. Maybe they'll let us practice." Eleanor looked at her granddaughter with newfound respect. At just 4 years old, Lily was already finding solutions where Eleanor saw only problems. "You know what?" Eleanor said, changing direction. "You're absolutely right. Let's go ask." Together they crossed the street, heading toward a new possibility and perhaps, if they were lucky, the first steps toward something that felt like home. The community center was busier than usual when Eleanor and Lily walked through the doors. A group of seniors sat in a circle for what looked like a book club, while in another corner some teenagers played board games. The walls were decorated with children's artwork and flyers for upcoming events. "May I help you?" asked the woman at the front desk. Her name tag read Gloria. She smiled warmly, recognizing them from their previous visits to use the showers. "I hope so," Eleanor said, her voice more confident than she felt inside. "I understand you have a piano here. My granddaughter and I were wondering if we might be allowed to practice on it from time to time." Gloria's eyebrows rose slightly in surprise. "You play?" "She plays beautiful," Lily chimed in before Eleanor could answer. "We're going to do a show at the mall." Eleanor felt her cheeks grow warm. "Well, that's not quite a show at the mall." Gloria leaned forward, suddenly interested. "Westfield? With the new piano they installed?" Eleanor nodded, explaining their encounter with the mall manager and his offer. As she spoke, she noticed Gloria's expression shift from polite interest to genuine excitement. "Mrs. Wilson, this is wonderful timing," Gloria said when Eleanor finished. "Our activities director just quit last week. We've been looking for someone to run our seniors' music program on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. It's only for 2 hours each day, but it pays." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. First the mall and now this? After months of nothing but rejection and closed doors, suddenly opportunities were appearing from nowhere. "I don't know if I would be qualified," Eleanor began hesitantly. "My hands aren't what they used to be." Gloria waved this concern away. "The seniors here don't need a concert pianist. They need someone who can lead them in songs they remember. Maybe teach a few simple pieces to those who want to learn. From what your granddaughter says, you'd be perfect." "Can we see the piano now?" Lily asked, growing impatient with the adult conversation. Gloria laughed. "Of course you can. It's in the multi-purpose room down the hall. No one's using it right now, so you're welcome to practice as long as you like. And Mrs. Wilson, think about the position, please. We could really use someone with your experience. The piano at the community center was nowhere near as fine as the one at the mall. It was an old upright with yellowed keys and a few dead notes in the upper register. But when Eleanor sat down and began to play, the sound was surprisingly warm and rich." Lily climbed up beside her grandmother, their shoulders touching. "Play the Moon Song again," she requested, referring to Claire de Lune. As Eleanor began to play, the stiffness in her fingers seemed less noticeable than earlier. Perhaps it was the playing at the mall that had loosened them. Or perhaps it was the newfound hope warming her from the inside out. Whatever the reason, the music flowed more easily now. Lily watched her grandmother's hands with intense concentration, then began to mimic the movements on her end of the keyboard. She couldn't reproduce the complex patterns Eleanor played, but she found complementary notes that somehow enhanced the original piece. "You have a gift, my darling," Eleanor said when they finished. "Your mother never wanted to learn, you know. She preferred sports, softball was her favorite." "Did my mom ever hear you play?" Lily asked, her small fingers still pressing random keys gently. The question caught Eleanor off guard. They rarely talked about Lily's mother, the loss still too painful for both of them. "Yes, of course she did. I played at her school concerts and at home before we sold our piano. I wish I remembered her more," Lily said quietly. Eleanor put her arm around the child's thin shoulders. "You were very little when she went to heaven, just 2.5. But she loved you more than anything in this world. She would sing to you every night, not very well, mind you, but with so much love." Lily leaned against her grandmother. "Can we play another song? Something happy this time." Eleanor nodded, grateful for the change in mood. She began to play a lively ragtime piece, one that had always been popular with her students. Lily giggled at the bouncy rhythm and tried to add her own flourishes. They didn't notice the door opening, or the people who began to gather just inside the room, drawn by the music and the unusual sight of the elderly woman and the tiny child playing together. When Eleanor finally finished the piece, she was startled by applause. Turning on the bench, she saw Gloria and several of the seniors from the book club standing in the doorway. "Mrs. Wilson," said an elderly man, stepping forward, "I haven't heard Scott Joplin played like that since my youth. You've made an old man very happy today." Others nodded in agreement, and one woman wiped tears from her eyes. "Would you play something else, please?" Eleanor looked at Lily, who nodded enthusiastically. "What would you like to hear?" she asked the group. "Do you know any Gershwin?" Someone called out. Eleanor smiled. Gershwin had been a favorite of hers to teach. She began to play Rhapsody in Blue, her confidence growing with every note. Lily seemed content to just listen this time, swaying slightly beside her on the bench. By the time they finished their impromptu concert, the room was nearly full. Residents from the senior center, staff members, and even some teenagers had wandered in, drawn by the music that filled the building. "I think we've found our new music director," Gloria announced to applause from the seniors. That is, if Mrs. Wilson is willing to take the position. Put on the spot, Eleanor felt a moment of panic. Could she really commit to this? What if her hands gave out? What if her arthritis flared up badly? But then she felt Lily's small hand slip into hers, and she knew her answer. "I would be honored," she said. After discussing the details with Gloria, 2 hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays, leading sing-alongs and basic piano lessons for interested seniors, Eleanor and Lily headed back to their car. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Are we still going to sleep in the car tonight?" Lily asked as they approached the old station wagon. The question cut through Eleanor's happy mood like a knife. Despite the promising developments of the day, their situation hadn't actually changed yet. They were still homeless. The community center job wouldn't start until next week, and the mall performance was still uncertain. "Yes, sweetheart, just for a little while longer," Eleanor said, trying to keep her voice light. "But things are looking up for us, don't you think?" Lily nodded, but Eleanor could see the disappointment in her eyes. At 4 years old, Lily was too young to fully understand their circumstances, but she was old enough to know that other children went home to proper houses with beds and bathrooms and kitchens. As they settled into their car for the night, Eleanor's mind raced with calculations. Between the potential mall performances and the community center job, she might be able to afford a tiny apartment soon. Not right away, but perhaps in a month or two if she saved every penny. "Grammy?" Lily's voice came through the darkness as they lay in the back seat beneath their blankets. "Yes, my darling? I think Mommy sent us the pianos," Lily said sleepily. "From heaven. Because she knew you missed playing." Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. "What makes you say that?" "Because you smile when you play. You don't smile much anymore, but today you did. A lot." Eleanor reached out to stroke Lily's hair, her heart both breaking and healing at the same time. "I think you might be right," she whispered. "Your mommy always knew what we needed." Lily's breathing deepened as she drifted off to sleep, but Eleanor remained awake, staring out at the stars visible through the car window. For the first time since they'd lost their home, she allowed herself to truly hope. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Eleanor and Lily spent hours at the community center, practicing on the piano there. Gloria had given them a key so they could come in early, before the center officially opened, allowing them a place to wash up and prepare for the day. On Friday afternoon, Eleanor finally worked up the courage to call Robert Hampton, the mall manager. To her relief, he was enthusiastic about scheduling her for a performance that very weekend. "Saturday at noon would be perfect," he said. "The mall is busiest then. We can set up a small sign with your name and perhaps a tip jar. Would 2 hours be manageable for you?" Eleanor thought about her arthritic hands. 2 hours would be challenging, but not impossible if she paced herself. "Yes, I believe we can manage that," she said, including Lily in the arrangement without hesitation. "Wonderful," Robert said. "We'll pay you our standard rate for performers plus you keep any tips. And Mrs. Wilson, I'm really looking forward to this. You brought something special to our mall the other day." That night, as they prepared for bed in their car, Eleanor noticed Lily was unusually quiet. "Are you nervous about tomorrow?" she asked, helping Lily into her pajamas. Lily shook her head. "No, but what if nobody stops to listen to us?" Eleanor smiled. "Then we'll be playing just for ourselves, and that's fine too. But I think people will listen. Music has a way of making people pause even when they're busy. Can I wear my blue dress? The one Mrs. Rodriguez gave me?" "Of course," Eleanor said. "And I'll wear my good blouse. We'll look very professional." As Lily snuggled under the blankets, Eleanor gazed out at the night sky, feeling a strange mix of excitement and anxiety about the next day. After decades of teaching others to play, she would be performing again herself. And not just any performance, one that might help change their fortunes. "We can do this," she whispered to herself as she drifted off to sleep. "We must." Saturday morning arrived with golden sunshine streaming through the car windows. Eleanor woke earlier than usual, her stomach fluttering with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Today would be their first official performance at the mall. She glanced at Lily, still sleeping peacefully beside her, and wondered if she was doing the right thing by including the child in this adventure. Too late for doubts now, she whispered to herself, carefully sitting up in the cramped back seat. Eleanor reached for her purse and pulled out a small compact mirror. The face that looked back at her was lined with age and worry, her silver hair needing attention. She had washed it yesterday at the community center, but it needed styling. She wanted to look her best today. Grammy? Lily's sleepy voice broke into her thoughts. Is it piano day? Eleanor smiled, tucking the mirror away. Yes, sweetheart. It's piano day. We should get ready. Mrs. Rodriguez said we could use her bathroom this morning, remember? An hour later, they were both transformed. Mrs. Rodriguez had not only let them use her bathroom, but had insisted on helping Eleanor set her hair in a neat bun, and had pressed their good clothes with her iron. Lily's blue dress looked almost new, and the child couldn't stop twirling to make the skirt flare out around her knees. You both look beautiful, Mrs. Rodriguez said, packing them a small lunch in a paper bag. I'll come to the mall later to hear you play. You don't have to do that, Eleanor protested, embarrassed by the woman's kindness. I want to, Mrs. Rodriguez insisted. Besides, my nephew works at the cell phone store there. He says he'll record some of your performance for me. The thought of being recorded made Eleanor's anxiety spike, but she nodded graciously. That's very kind. Thank you for everything. They arrived at the mall 45 minutes early. The doors had just opened, and the morning cleaning crew was still at work, polishing floors and wiping down surfaces. Robert Hampton was waiting for them near the piano, his face lighting up when he spotted them approaching. Mrs. Wilson, right on time, he greeted them. And this must be your granddaughter. Lily, the child introduced herself, extending her small hand formally as Eleanor had taught her. Robert shook her hand with equal formality, hiding a smile. Very pleased to meet you, Miss Lily. We've set everything up for you both. Indeed, the area around the piano had been transformed. 2 potted plants with colorful flowers framed the instrument. A small sign on an easel read, "Today's performance, Eleanor Wilson and Lily Wilson, piano duo, 12:02 p.m." A chair had been placed beside the piano bench, and a glass jar with a handwritten label saying "Tips Appreciated" sat on top of the piano. Eleanor felt overwhelmed by the professionalism of it all. This wasn't just a casual performance. It was being presented as a real event. Is everything to your satisfaction? Robert asked, noticing her expression. It's wonderful, Eleanor managed to say. Better than I expected. The mall has been promoting your performance on our social media since yesterday, Robert explained. People seemed very interested after seeing that video. Video? Eleanor asked, confused. Oh, I assumed you knew. Someone recorded your impromptu performance earlier this week and posted it online. It's had quite a few views. Eleanor didn't know whether to be flattered or mortified. She hadn't performed publicly in decades, and now strangers had been watching her play. Grammy, can I try the piano? Lily asked, already moving toward the bench. Of course, sweetheart. We should practice a little before people arrive. Robert excused himself, promising to check on them closer to noon, and Eleanor sat beside Lily on the bench. The child was pressing keys randomly, delighting in the sounds. Let's try some of the pieces we practiced, Eleanor suggested, gently guiding Lily's small hands to the right position. They began with simple scales, Eleanor playing in the middle register while Lily mirrored her an octave higher. Then they moved on to the lullaby they had been working on, Lily now able to play a simple melody with her right hand while Eleanor provided the accompaniment. As they practiced, early shoppers began to pause and watch. A small crowd formed, standing at a respectful distance. Eleanor noticed a few people recording with their phones but tried to ignore them and focus on Lily, who was concentrating hard on remembering the notes. You're doing wonderfully, Eleanor encouraged when they finished the piece. Should we try Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star now? You've almost got it perfect. Lily nodded eagerly and they began again. This time, Lily played the melody while Eleanor added chords beneath it, turning the simple children's song into something more complex and beautiful. By the time noon approached, a substantial crowd had gathered around the piano. Robert returned, looking pleased by the turnout. Ready to begin your official performance?
He asked. Eleanor took a deep breath and nodded.
Ready? Robert stepped forward and addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, Westfield Shopping Center is proud to present a special musical performance by Eleanor Wilson, former concert pianist, and her granddaughter, Lily. Please enjoy the music, and feel free to show your appreciation. As Robert stepped away, Eleanor whispered to Lily, "What should we play first?" "The Moon Song," Lily whispered back, their special name for Clair de Lune. Eleanor nodded and positioned her hands over the keys. She could do this. For Lily. For their future. The first notes of Debussy's masterpiece filled the atrium, floating up toward the glass ceiling and spreading throughout the mall. Eleanor closed her eyes briefly, letting the music take her back to her youth, to concert halls and applause, to a time when her fingers moved without pain, and her future stretched endlessly before her. When she opened her eyes, she saw Lily watching her intently, waiting for her cue. As they had practiced, Eleanor nodded slightly, and Lily began to add her simple counter-melody, high, clear notes that danced above Eleanor's complex patterns like stars in the night sky. The crowd grew as they played, people stopping on their way to and from stores. Drawn by the unexpected beauty in the midst of an ordinary shopping day, Eleanor noticed faces softening, shoulders relaxing as the music worked its magic on hurried shoppers. A young couple held hands, an elderly man closed his eyes in appreciation. A mother swayed gently with her baby. When they finished the piece, there was a moment of silence before the applause began, tentative at first, then growing stronger. Eleanor saw people nudging each other, whispering, pointing discreetly at them. She felt Lily straighten with pride beside her on the bench. "That was beautiful," someone called out. "Play another," said someone else. Eleanor smiled at Lily. "Ready for the next one?" The child nodded enthusiastically, and they launched into a Mozart piece that Eleanor had simplified for Lily's still developing skills. Again, the crowd responded warmly, and several people approached to drop money into the tip jar. As the performance continued, Eleanor's initial nervousness faded. Despite her arthritic hands, despite the years away from performing, the music flowed through her like a healing stream. Each piece seemed easier than the last, her fingers finding the right keys almost without conscious thought. During a brief pause while Eleanor flexed her hands, Lily leaned close and whispered, "Grammy, that man is crying." Eleanor followed Lily's gaze to a middle-aged man standing near the front of the crowd. Indeed, tears were streaming down his face as he watched them. "The music makes some people emotional," Eleanor explained softly. "It's a compliment." When they began their next piece, a gentle Chopin nocturne, Eleanor noticed more people with tears in their eyes. A woman with shopping bags at her feet was openly weeping, though she was smiling through her tears. An elderly couple held each other's hands tightly, both with glistening eyes. What was happening? Eleanor had expected people to enjoy their playing, perhaps pause briefly before moving on with their shopping. She hadn't expected this emotional response, this rapt attention from a growing crowd. During their break at the 1-hour mark, Robert approached with bottles of water for both of them. "This is remarkable," he said, his voice low. "I've never seen anything like it. People are calling friends to come to the mall specifically to hear you play." Eleanor took a sip of water, trying to process this information. "But why? I'm just an old woman playing the piano with my granddaughter." Robert shook his head. "It's much more than that, Mrs. Wilson. Look around." Eleanor did, and what she saw astonished her. The crowd had not dispersed during their break. If anything, it had grown larger. People were sitting on benches and even on the floor, apparently settling in for the second half of the performance. "Grammy, look." Lily pointed excitedly to the tip jar, which was now nearly full of bills. "We'll need a bigger jar for next time," Robert said with a smile. "Are you ready to continue? Next time?" The words filled Eleanor with hope. There would be a next time. She nodded, and they resumed their positions at the piano. For the second hour, Eleanor chose more upbeat pieces, some ragtime, a bit of jazz, even a simplified version of Rhapsody in Blue that had people tapping their feet and nodding along. Lily, gaining confidence, added her own flourishes, sometimes singing along in her clear, childish voice. As they approached the end of their scheduled time, Eleanor realized she didn't want to stop. For the first time in months, perhaps years, she felt truly alive, truly herself. The music had reconnected her to the person she had been before loss and hardship had reshaped her life. "One last piece," she announced to the crowd, who responded with sounds of disappointment. "But we'll be back next weekend," she added, glancing at Robert, who nodded confirmation. "What should we play last, Lily?" she asked. Lily thought for a moment, then whispered in Eleanor's ear. Eleanor nodded, smiling at her granddaughter's choice. Together, they began to play What a Wonderful World, Eleanor singing the lyrics softly as they played. Her voice, though aged, was still clear and true. When she reached the line, "And I think to myself, what a wonderful world," Lily joined in, their voices blending in perfect harmony. There wasn't a dry eye in the atrium when they finished. The applause was thunderous, people standing to show their appreciation. Several approached the piano to add more money to the overflowing tip jar, while others simply wanted to shake their hands or offer words of thanks. As they finally rose from the bench, exhausted but exhilarated, Eleanor looked down at Lily's beaming face and felt a surge of pure joy. Whatever tomorrow might bring, today they had created something beautiful together. Today they had touched hearts and reminded people, including themselves, that even in the darkest times, music could still bring light. Eleanor's hands trembled as she counted the money from the tip jar. She and Lily sat in their car, the evening sun casting long shadows across the parking lot. After their performance, Robert had helped them transfer the overflowing bills into a paper bag, away from curious eyes. "How much is it, Grammy?" Lily asked, trying to peek into the bag. "I'm still counting, sweetheart," Eleanor said, carefully separating the bills into piles. There were mostly ones and fives, but also several 20s and even a few $50 bills. When she finally finished counting, Eleanor had to steady herself against the dashboard. $378, she whispered, hardly believing it. "Lily, do you know what this means?" Lily shook her head, not fully grasping the significance of the amount. "It means we can get a real place to stay tonight. A motel room with real beds and a shower." Eleanor's voice cracked with emotion. "We don't have to sleep in the car." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? Tonight?" "Yes, tonight," Eleanor confirmed, already starting the car. "And maybe tomorrow night too, if we're careful with the money." 20 minutes later, they were checking into a modest motel on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but clean and safe with 2 beds and a bathroom of their own. The desk clerk, an older woman with kind eyes, didn't ask questions when Eleanor paid in cash, just handed over the key with a smile. "Room 112, around the corner. There's a vending machine by the office if you need snacks, and breakfast is included in the morning. Simple stuff, cereal, toast, coffee, but it'll fill you up." When they opened the door to their room, Lily ran straight to the nearest bed and jumped on it, bouncing with delight. "It's so soft." And big. Eleanor set down their few belongings and sank onto the edge of the other bed. The events of the day caught up with her all at once, the performance, the crowd, the emotional response, and now this. For the first time in months, they would sleep in real beds. "Can I take a bath, Grammy? A real bath with bubbles?" Eleanor smiled. "Of course you can, darling. Let me run the water for you." Later, after they had both bathed and changed into clean nightclothes, they lay in their separate beds watching a cartoon on the small TV. Eleanor couldn't remember the last time she had felt so clean, so comfortable, so hopeful. The ache in her hands from playing for 2 hours straight was there, but it was a good ache, a reminder of what they had accomplished. "Grammy?" Lily's voice came through the darkness after they had turned out the lights. "Yes, sweetheart? Can we live in a motel forever?" Eleanor sighed. "No, not forever. Motels are for temporary stays. But maybe if we keep playing at the mall and I work at the community center, we can save enough for a small apartment soon." "With a piano?" Lily asked sleepily. "Someday," Eleanor promised, though she knew a piano would be well beyond their means for a long time. "Now go to sleep. We have another big day tomorrow." Morning brought sunshine streaming through the thin curtains and the luxury of waking up without stiff joints from sleeping in the car. They ate breakfast in the small motel dining area, Lily delighting in the miniature cereal boxes, Eleanor savoring a cup of real coffee. "What are we doing today?" Lily asked, milk dribbling down her chin. Eleanor wiped it away with a napkin. "First, we need to go back to the car and get our things. Then I thought we might look at some apartments just to see what's available and how much they cost." The reality of apartment hunting proved sobering. Even the smallest, most basic units in safe neighborhoods were well beyond what Eleanor could afford on her Social Security check, plus the community center job. They would need regular income from the mall performances and more to make it work. By late afternoon, Eleanor felt her hope fading. They were viewing the sixth apartment of the day, a tiny one-bedroom in an older building. The manager, a heavy-set man with thinning hair, was showing them around. "It needs some work," he admitted as Eleanor noted the water stains on the ceiling. "But it's the cheapest you'll find in a decent area. $600 a month plus utilities, first and last month's rent up front, plus security deposit." Eleanor did the math quickly in her head. Nearly $2,000 just to move in. Impossible. "Thank you for your time," she said politely. "We'll think about it." Outside on the sidewalk, Lily looked up at her. "Didn't you like that one either, Grammy?" "It's not that, sweetheart. It's just," Eleanor trailed off, unsure how to explain finances to a 4-year-old. They were standing there, uncertain where to go next, when Eleanor's phone rang, an unusual occurrence since few people had her number. It was an unfamiliar local number. "Hello," she answered hesitantly. "Mrs. Wilson, this is Thomas Chen from Channel 7 News. I'm calling because we've seen the video of you and your granddaughter playing piano at the Westfield Mall, and we'd like to do a feature story on you for our evening broadcast." Eleanor was stunned into silence. "Mrs. Wilson, are you there?" "Yes, I'm here," she managed. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand. Why would you want to do a story about us?" The reporter explained that the video from the mall had gone viral overnight, with hundreds of thousands of views. People were touched by the intergenerational piano duo, especially when someone had added context in the comments about their circumstances. "Your story is resonating with people. Mrs. Wilson, a gifted musician who fell on hard times, playing with her granddaughter and moving an entire mall to tears. Would you be willing to meet with us for an interview?" Eleanor's instinct was to refuse. Their homelessness was a private shame, not something to be broadcast on television. But then she thought about their apartment search, about the impossibility of their situation, and about how this might be an opportunity. "When would you want to do this interview?" she asked. "Today, if possible. We could meet you at the mall by the piano where it all happened." Eleanor looked down at Lily, who was watching her curiously. "We'll be there in an hour," she decided. The news crew was already set up when they arrived at the mall. A young woman with a bright smile approached them. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm Lisa Tang, the reporter who'll be interviewing you. And this must be Lily. It's wonderful to meet you both." Everything happened quickly after that. They were positioned on the piano bench, microphones were attached to their clothes, lights were adjusted. A small crowd of curious shoppers gathered to watch. "Just be yourselves," Lisa advised. "Tell your story and maybe play a short piece for us." The interview began with simple questions about Eleanor's background as a pianist and music teacher. Then came the harder questions about how they had ended up homeless. Eleanor took a deep breath. "After my daughter, Lily's mother, passed away last year, I became Lily's guardian. Then I had a fall that required surgery. The medical bills took all my savings and I fell behind on rent. Before I knew it, we were living in my car." "And how did you end up playing here at the mall?" Lisa asked gently. "We came in one rainy day, just looking for someplace warm to spend a few hours," Eleanor explained. "When Lily saw the piano, she wanted to hear me play. It had been so long since I'd touched a piano, but once I started," she smiled, remembering the moment. "Once I started, it felt like coming home." "Would you play something for us now?" Lisa asked. Eleanor nodded, and she and Lily performed a shortened version of Clair de Lune, with Lily adding her simple counter melody. The camera crew moved around them, capturing their hands on the keys, their expressions, the reactions of the growing audience. When they finished, there wasn't a dry eye among the news crew. Lisa quickly wiped away a tear before continuing the interview. "Mrs. Wilson, what are your hopes for the future?" Eleanor looked at Lily, then back at the reporter. "Stability for my granddaughter, a place to call home, and to keep playing music together for as long as we can." By the time they left the mall, Eleanor felt emotionally drained but also lighter somehow, as if sharing their story had lifted a burden from her shoulders. "Did we do good, Grammy?" Lily asked as they walked back to their car. "You did wonderfully, sweetheart," Eleanor assured her. "Now let's get some dinner and head back to the motel. We have enough money for another night." The news segment aired at 6 o'clock that evening. Eleanor and Lily watched it on the small motel TV, Lily giggling at seeing herself on screen. Eleanor thought it was well done, respectful of their situation without turning it into a pity story. What she didn't expect was what happened next. At 7:30, her phone rang again. It was Robert from the mall. "Mrs. Wilson, have you seen what's happening online?" "What do you mean?" After your news segment aired, someone set up an online fundraiser for you and Lily. It's already raised over $5,000, and it's growing by the minute. People want to help you get back on your feet. Eleanor couldn't speak. $5,000? Enough for first and last month's rent, a security deposit, some furniture. And that's not all, Robert continued. We've had calls from 3 different music schools offering you teaching positions. And a local furniture store wants to donate a piano for your new home, wherever that might be. The room seemed to spin around Eleanor. This can't be real, she whispered. It's very real, Mrs. Wilson. Your story touched people's hearts. They want to help. After she hung up, Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed trying to process everything. Lily climbed into her lap, sensing her grandmother's emotional state. What's wrong, Grammy? Are you sad? Eleanor hugged her tightly. No, my darling. These are happy tears. Very, very happy tears. 1 month later, Eleanor stood in the middle of a small but bright 1-bedroom apartment, watching as 2 men carefully positioned an upright piano against the wall of the living room. It wasn't new, but it had been professionally restored, its dark wood gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. The apartment was modestly furnished with donations and items purchased with the fundraiser money, which had eventually topped $20,000. Eleanor had been overwhelmed by the generosity of strangers, but had been careful with the funds, knowing they needed to build a sustainable future. She now had 3 income streams: the community center job, weekend performances at the mall, and 4 private piano students who came to the apartment for lessons. It wasn't luxury, but it was enough. More than enough. Can I play it now? Lily asked eagerly as the delivery men left. Of course, Eleanor said, joining her granddaughter on the bench. As they began to play together, Eleanor looked around at their new home, at the photographs on the wall, including the one of her at Carnegie Hall, now joined by a new one of her and Lily at the mall, at the small kitchen where they cooked meals together, at the cozy bedroom they shared. You know what, Lily? She said softly. What, Grammy? Your mother would be so proud of you. And I think she really did send us those pianos, just like you said. Lily smiled, her small hands finding the right keys without hesitation now. I know, she's listening to us play right now. Eleanor nodded, blinking back tears as their music filled the apartment. From homelessness to hope, from loss to love, their journey had been difficult, but music had saved them. And as they played together, grandmother and granddaughter, Eleanor knew that whatever challenges might come, they would face them together, one note at a time.